session. Commissioner Werfel, as you know, the House passed the Tax Relief for American Families and Workers Act, included adjustments to child tax credit. You just briefly touched on that. I want to ask some additional questions to make the record reflect appropriately. But the bill passed through this committee by a vote of 40-3, and it received 357 votes on the House floor. As I mentioned in my opening statement, I appreciate the work you and your team have done to help ensure that the bill can be implemented as quickly as possible. I just want to confirm a few details with you. The overwhelming majority of American taxpayers are guaranteed to have no adjustment to their tax liability due to the child tax credit changes in this bill. In fact, can you confirm that only roughly 10% of households will be effective and will receive just modest adjustments to their tax refunds?
Yes. In fact, in looking at the numbers, if you look at the same eligible population in fiscal year 22, it was about 22.5 million people. So that metric that you offered is in line with our understanding of how it's going to impact taxpayers going forward.
Thank you. We worked with your team to make sure the bill did not place a new burden on taxpayers and can be implemented without delay. Can you confirm that taxpayers do not need to file amended returns to obtain the adjustments the bill makes, further speeding things up?
Yes.
Thank you. There is language in the legislation requiring the IRS to process any additional returns without delay. As a matter of fact, that was language we added during the markup in this room. If the bill is passed by the Senate and signed into law, how quickly will you be able to make the child tax credit adjustments for this filing season? In other words, how long will it take after bill signage for the IRS to send out any additional refunds?
Well, we gave you a range of 6 to 12 weeks required for implementation from the point of enactment. The reason we give a range is because we need to see the final language, but I'm committed to work diligently to make sure we're closer to the 6-week end of that range than the 12-week.
I appreciate hearing that, Commissioner. So just to be clear, we have your commitment that the IRS will move as quickly as possible.
It will be a top priority to make sure that this gets done.
Thank you, sir. In the past, Congress has asked the IRS to make changes during tax filing season. In fact, Congress has asked the IRS to make much larger changes than this bill does, like sending stimulus checks to hundreds of millions of taxpayers, or creating a monthly check sending system for the child tax credit on the fly. The number of taxpayers affected here is a fraction of those affected in those other programs. Given that, can you confirm the administrative adjustments needed to implement the Tax Relief for American Families and Workers Act are a much lighter lift for the IRS than for those other programs?
Yes, and Mr. Chairman, the work that we did to implement the payments that you referred allowed us to build additional capacity to make us even more ready for this change.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Werfel, the individual who stole and disclosed the tax information of thousands of Americans has now been punished with a sentence of 5 years in prison. While I'm glad the judge in the case sentenced him to the maximum available to her, I was surprised that the Department of Justice only charged the individual with one count of unauthorized disclosure and no other crimes. Did you make a recommendation to the Department of Justice on how to charge in this case?
No, that's not the role of the IRS Commissioner. We allow and defer to the Department of Justice on prosecutorial decisions.
Do you think one count of disclosure matches the crime committed?
I think that protecting taxpayer information from unauthorized access is an absolute solemn responsibility of the IRS. And I also believe that this individual betrayed the trust. He betrayed his own commitments. He betrayed IRS employees, and he betrayed the American tax people. And that type of betrayal should not be tolerated. And based on what's playing out in court, it's not being tolerated because this person is being brought to justice, and as I understand it, is going to spend years in prison.
5 years. Do you think the penalty should have been higher for this individual?
I don't have a judgment on that, Mr. Chairman. I rely on the court and the judicial process to play out, and I trust that the judicial process will get the right answer.
I was looking at more of the legislative process of whether Congress should change and increase the penalties for someone who abuses taxpayer information like this situation. I now recognize the ranking member.